Hi everyone. A little bit about me. I am 30 years old. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. Graphic designer by trade. Studied at Alberta College of Art and Design. Did a 4-year degree. Um, Emphasis on graphic design. We did a bit of advertising, a little bit of illustration, you name it. We kind of did it all. After graduation, I looked at the career prospects within my city, and although there's some incredible studios, I, for whatever reason, felt like if I was going to give design my all, I wanted to be in a creatively thriving city. So at the time, I was really torn between Montreal or London. Um, those were two kind of cities that called to me. I'd never been to either. I quite liked the idea of both of them. I spent the next 2 or 3 months just after graduation pursuing both cities to just see which one was going to be the right one. After applying for jobs in both and not really having great results, but a lot of interest, and also getting really excited about the studios that existed in both, I felt like London was becoming more of a possibility, and Montreal basically had doors closed. Mostly because I couldn't speak French, and all the studios I really wanted to work for, you had to know both. So I ended up in London. Here we are today. This is Greetings from London. This is quite an exciting question for me. Once I arrived in London, I was unemployed for September, October, November, December, January, February. I got the job in March. I interviewed for it in January. The process was really rigorous. I'll get into that in a second, but basically, I always say, I'm not entirely sure, I haven't really counted it, that I applied for more than 100 jobs. That's what it felt like, at least. And basically, no one got back to me, which was really disheartening. I did have one interview besides the interview I had at Macmillan, which is the company I was with for 4 years. And that was for a free internship. And basically, the guy talked to me for like 2 hours and was like, "Oh, you're highly creative and I love your portfolio, but like, we just want someone who can do animation." And my portfolio coming out of ACAD was predominantly editorial and print. So, needless to say, I wasn't the right person for the job. But it was cool to see what another studio looked like in London, and it was really relieving to just have the practice of an interview. So when I interviewed for the job in January at Macmillan, I completely forgot I even applied for that job. I had found the company through a giant coffee table book I'd purchased called Fully Inked, Fully Booked, Ink on Paper. I might have some of those words mixed up, but you kind of get the gist of the title. And I went through the whole index, created an Excel spreadsheet because I knew the book was filled with design studios who were specializing in print, and that was an area I was really interested in. So after making my Excel spreadsheet, updating it with the art directors, whether they were hiring, and on a monthly basis checking back in, I saw that Macmillan was, I fired off an email for a position that was going for a junior designer. Well, it just went for the term designer. The pay was incredibly low compared to what it would have been in Calgary, and even compared to my internship, so that was a bit discouraging, but fuck it, it was a job, so I was excited about it. So yeah, I ended up applying and getting an interview. The first interview, or the first round, they interviewed 8 people. The second round, we were given a brief where we had to design a book cover. That was between 3 people, like myself and 2 others. And 2 days later, my boss invited me in for like a really mysterious meeting. I thought he was just going to give me feedback, but basically he proceeded to tell me over the course of an hour that I was never the front runner until the very end, and basically how could they not hire me. So incredible relief. At this point, I had no savings left. I was trying to make it in one of the most expensive cities on a currency that blows the Canadian dollar out of the water. So really excited. It was in print. The team seemed cool, and yeah, it was really exciting. So in terms of were the choices by design or circumstance, it was a bit of both. I knew I wanted to work in print, and I knew I wanted to work with the editorial side of things. So like storytelling and how do you depict that. I had predominantly been looking at magazines up until this point. I'd always heard of book cover design. I did a project at ACAD on Chip Kid. But I had never really thought of it as a career until Macmillan. So yeah. So in terms of risk, I didn't really feel it. I knew that when I left Calgary over that summer, I think I made $7,000. So not like a huge amount of money, but still enough to survive. And before I got the job at Macmillan, I was like down to the last grand, which is really scary when you know that the flight costs about 1,000. So to go back to Calgary. So yeah, that really worked out. So financial risk, yes. In terms of like life risk and knowing what I wanted to do, not at all. Well, my grandparents are English, so my grandma always calls it like reverse immigration. She thought it was really strange that I was coming back here. Uh, it's all right. She let me send in her birth certificate in order to get ancestry visa, so on some level she was on board. And in terms of my parents, I think I've always been a bit of the wild child, the free spirit, the like they can say no, but I'll still follow my intuition. So in their own way, they kind of always support that attitude. I'm not sure if it's like something they freely give or if it's something they've just learned to accommodate. But yeah, they're supportive in their own way. So that's always good to know. On my CV, again, I don't really count things. I'm not a very logistical or detailed kind of person. I'm more bigger picture. I write that I've designed 200 covers. That's if I were to accurately count it, I'm probably a couple shy, maybe a couple more, who knows. But yeah, about 200 in a 4-year career. Lots of ones do different things. I think it's really easy for a designer to be proud of the ones that got picked up by all the people they admire, be it like blogs or publications or gives them notoriety. But for me, a lot of them were things that I broke kind of in a professional setting, so like some sort of boundary. I did a cover called What Belongs to You, and though the final cover is an adaptation of the US jacket, which stings a little bit because it's basically like, here are all my cool ideas, and then they're like, oh yeah, actually the US designer did a better job. Can we just like take what they did and make it work for the UK market? But the thing that was really cool about that project was new author, fresh and exciting, in a very controversial subject matter. And I remember pitching because I wanted it to be the book that people talked about and the book that I knew the subject matter would make lots of people uncomfortable, but also it was beautifully written. So the editor and I had agreed to pitch a cover which featured a beautifully shot photograph of a man naked from the back. And I loved the idea of this project. And I loved pitching it because it made everyone in the room uncomfortable and it really polarized basically all the people in Macmillan who get to make the final call about what the cover is. And to pitch something that divided everyone, really made people stop and think, and also get them excited about the book was like win, win, win. I absolutely loved the idea that we were going to put a book out into the market where if you saw people reading it on the tube or at a cafe, they would be holding the book with the bum on it. You can find this one on my website. It's under my killed covers section. They didn't end up going with it. Like I said, they went for an adaptation of the US jacket. But what it did for me professionally was it gave me a lot of confidence in my ideas and that every project I get to approach, I get to put my personal stamp on. Yeah. So what can I get away with? That was my approach to every cover I designed from that point onwards. It was probably something I subconsciously thought in my initial covers as well, of like, I'm this Canadian girl in a very English industry with a funny accent. I don't necessarily use proper grammar, but who am I? And this, although it was really scary when I started there and oftentimes paralyzing and quite nerve-wracking when it came to like pitching my ideas, it also really freed me up to just be me and see how well that went over. And once I started designing covers and bringing my own sort of spin and ideas to them, and then having them get picked up by the Casual Optimist or Creative Review or a few others, my confidence as well as my reputation started to change. And not only did the confidence get better, but also like confidence within myself, but also the confidence from my peers. So a lot of the editors who had been at Macmillan for like 20 plus years, who had seen everyone, all these different designers go in their time, it was quite exciting to win them over, work with them for the first time. And then by the third and fourth time, and even 2 years into the job, to then approach every cover of like, cool, so this is the book you just bought. You're super excited about it. Together, what can we do to rock the world of book design? Because as a designer, it's far more exciting to create things that I haven't seen. I haven't seen other designers put on the covers, be it like HarperCollins or Penguin or Faber and Faber. It's like, what can we create together that will excite retailers, book buyers, as well as like the departments of other publishing houses, so that they want to be seen holding this book and ultimately buy and read it. So that has been my mantra. Probably the best example of this, well, probably the most recent one would be the Pan 70s. If you haven't seen them, check them out. I have seen a few in chapters in Indigo when I was home, but basically they're a really minimalized aesthetic. It was a series design I did for Pan Macmillan to celebrate 70 years as a publishing house. So we did everything from The Lost World to Gone with the Wind to Jaws to Dam Busters. The list goes on and on. There was 20 titles, and everyone in my department at the time for that series was asked to design a look that they think the series should have, and kind of what was the aesthetic that they would be excited about if they saw it in a bookshop. And I've always loved Swiss design, and though I think Helvetica is used far too often, it was the project to really use it, embrace it, and like apply a style that everybody regards as beautiful, sophisticated. Everything design should be. It's minimalistic, it's iconic, it just does what it does. There's no need to explain it. And to apply Swiss style to a book series design was so exciting. And I think it only worked on that series because the titles were so iconic that, for example, on the Jaws cover, you could just show the water and then have the fin be made in the negative space of the W. If nobody knew what Jaws was, it definitely would not be successful or memorable. It might be interesting once reading the book, but it wouldn't have that sort of like, that's clever. So that was probably my best example of applying the what can I get away with and having it really work, and then again having people pick up on it. That was the project I won my second D&AD pencil for, and it was a graphite one, so that's insane. It was really exciting. So the biggest challenges I faced were feeling like I didn't love publishing as much as other people, and when I had heard other people's stories about how they got into it, it was like a real like passion pursuit, whereas I kind of feel like I fell into it. Fortunately so, for sure, but it wasn't as directed and formulaic as other people's. And then again, once I said about cultural differences, is once I got the job, there was a lot of highly educated people, as well as like so many cultural norms that I just didn't understand. Stereotypically, English people don't discuss everything. Maybe it's a Calgary thing. I like to think it's a Canadian thing that we kind of update everyone about everything. So yeah, it was initially I was an oversharer. I probably still am. Everything from like bowel movements to my love life. Came to the office, also came into my cover design, but what started out as the thing that kind of separated me from everyone and made me feel possibly isolated kind of became my USP and the way that I got to shine in the workplace. No longer was I pitching covers that I was like, oh, here's the brief, here's the market, here's what's up. It then became, here's the market, or here's the brief, here's the book, here's my connection, here's where I think the market is, and here's where I think we could take it. And once I established that rapport and owned the fact that I was Canadian and brought something different to the table, I really started to shine. And also the feedback I got so often in my first 2 years of pitching anything cool that I liked was just, oh, it's too American. Oh, yeah, it would work if you're like, if this was a New York publisher, but it's not the market. And I would look at it and be like, how is it American? It's like, it's just conceptual, like Stefan Sagmeister. Like, why does that make something American? And then, yeah, I think I slowly chipped away at that mold. And then also a lot of exciting designers and other publishing houses kind of started finding this hybrid style of English meets quote unquote American. And that kind of like paved the path for me to do my own thing. So in terms of biggest rewards, it's definitely working with people who wouldn't otherwise be in publishing. So often I approached the covers with, okay, what do I want to see on it? And even though that was good and fun, the second question in the back of my brain was always, okay, so how can I bring in someone who hasn't worked in publishing and this could possibly launch their career? So this was usually talent in the form of illustrators, photographers, embroiderers, journalers, like basically anyone who had a craft and a passion that they were doing on like Etsy or Pinterest or Flickr. And I absolutely loved bringing those people in on a project. I typically found that people who had never had their work published brought so much more to the table because it wasn't just a paycheck. It was like, it could be the start of their career. So they brought immense gratitude, incredible work ethic, and yeah, just insanely original and like untamed ideas. So to work with those individuals was always my biggest reward. I actually recently heard this in a podcast about relationships, and I would say the exact same thing is true about a job. And that is when you know someone can bring more to it and do a better job than you, it's time to leave. You deserve to have an employee who wants to be here, because even though I have the rapport with my colleagues and this job is amazing, I'm no longer giving it 110%. At the end of my 4 years, I just reached a point where I was no longer grateful to like sit in that desk and to be getting those briefs. And I knew I should be, but I wanted to change. Every week it changes, so that's exciting and scary. Sometimes I'm like, how am I gonna pay my bills? But everything always works out. So currently I am freelancing for, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say the exact publishers, but basically since leaving Macmillan, I've worked for every single major publishing house on a freelance basis. So that's been really cool to see how other people work and to see their reaction for how I work. Never do I go in-house to meet with them. I usually do the work remotely and send it through. Yeah, I guess I can only really talk about this week. So I have a meeting with IKEA, which I'm quite excited. I'm not entirely sure what the project is. As far as I know, it's volunteer, but with some huge perks, and it's an area I'm really interested in. It's about making your house eco-friendly and sustainable, and it's based on the Swedish philosophy of lagom, which is enough is enough. So not living your life in excess. I'm quite excited about the project because it's still in the realm of communication, which I recently gave a talk about cover design, and a big emphasis here was that as cover designers, we are experts in communication. Just designers in general, we're experts in communication, and therefore it is our job to be facilitating and creating the conversations we want to be having. So with that kind of as my new ethos, yeah, the IKEA project really excites me. It's like, I want to talk about how people can live, create a beautiful environment, make every day inspiring, but do it on a ecological and economical positioning. I'm not entirely sure what the word is, but like, yeah, keep it both those things. Doing lots in the field of communication, I always kind of bring my design eye back into things. Like I said, I still am doing freelance cover design. And then again, I have another like big book project coming up, which is commissioning an illustrator, doing picture research, and then typesetting an entire lifestyle coffee table book. Actually about Japan, so that's quite exciting. But yeah, so I'm doing a few different things. I'm pursuing a lot of my own side projects, be it books I want published, and therefore I would design. Everything from brunch and yoga to a solo female traveling group. So you name it, whatever I'm interested in, I'm creating, because as designers, we can be that person. So that's my favorite thing about the degree and the industry. Basically, I love communication, and for me, design was just one tool or avenue that I kind of got to practice that and fine-tune what I'm really about, what I think about, and create the world I want to be living in. But now I'm getting a lot clearer about what are kind of the conversations I want to be having. So my like 3 big ones are the idea is like living the best life that you can live, and that is through exercise. And by exercise, I just mean movement. It can be stretching or dancing or whatever. Nutrition, and then the last one is sex education. So these projects are really important to me because I feel like we're in a really good time right now with social media, as well as like the internet has done wonders in terms of you can have an idea and make it happen. By the way, if you hear fireworks, it's because it's Guy Fawkes Day, and that is a real holiday here. There's fireworks everywhere. Anyway, back on track. It's really important as a designer to know who they are, and that's such an open-ended, airy-fairy question. But you'll figure it out slowly. Every job, you kind of learn more about yourself. The same is true about a relationship. And so the areas I talked about as the conversations I want to be having are really important, because they're kind of a way that is the guiding principle behind every job that I take. So even the covers I'm currently working on with other publishers, I go back to those 3 kind of core things of projects I want to be working on. And I've been really lucky or blessed in the sense that currently I'm working in all the areas that interest me. So yeah, I'm paying the bills. So that's a good one. Probably the challenge is like having faith in myself that the jobs will come, the work will come, and that my skills are transferable. I think it's the really scary thing about when you work in something that seems so niche, such as book cover design, there's that fear of like, oh, can I really do anything except books? And it's always fun to like rewrite it on a CV to look at all the skills you really have. There's so many. I really feel like anyone who's worked a corporate job has incredibly comparable and transferable skills to the ones that I have. Be it like one-on-one meetings with executives or like pitching a project, the number of meetings I had with authors to convince them on certain colors or certain choices and why it was best for the market and why it reflected the content of their book, are so similar to the conversations people have for sales for an electric car company. Or yeah, if you work for Starbucks and you are like talking about brand guidelines, it's like, even though it's cover design, I still played by the same rules. And so even though it seems quite niche, it equipped me with a lot of professional skills. Meditation and a very good support group. I'm quite lucky, be it like industry colleagues or friends. I make sure I'm quite precious about how I spend my time, and I choose to always surround myself with people who believe in me and reiterate that. I'm worth it, my skills are transferable, I'm employable, and I can do anything. So please, please, please go find those people, keep them near you, and you'll know just from doing design work who are the people who always believe in your ideas, no matter how crazy they are. Probably the crazier the ideas, the easier it is to suss out whether someone's your friend or not. Because the people who really believe in you will still find value in your craziest, shittest idea, and they will tell you honest feedback in the most respectful way, in a way that inspires you to keep pushing and keep going. So find those people, keep those people, and see where they take you. This is really topical right now. This is about the gender pay gap. So I think, one, I would step into my value and know my worth a lot earlier on in my career. Probably after I won my first D&AD pencil, I should have really owned that power. I'm not sure if it's because I come from an English upbringing or maybe it was the culture, but basically my thought process was downplay your achievements in order to like rightfully own them. Be humble, humble, humble. I realize now that didn't really help my industry. It definitely did not help the women in this industry. So something I would do differently is fight harder for a pay raise. And even though I got one in the end off the back of that, I should have pushed for it sooner and put more on the line. In terms of niche versus general, I think like just pursue what you're interested in. Whatever your first job will be is going to be the right thing, even if it seems irrelevant or you hate it. You will learn so much from it, and there are pros and cons to every job. Even if the job seems fucking awful, you will still find a silver lining, and it will help you get clear about what you want in the next job. So my advice is don't sweat it too much. Pursue the areas you're most interested in. Don't sell yourself short. Just because something's niche, like if you really want to design Pokemon cards and people tell you print is dying and Pokemon's no longer cool, but you're into it, it's like, do it. They're probably hiring. And I think you have nothing to lose. Just pursue absolutely everything you're interested in and see which doors open and which doors close. I think don't sweat it. Don't sweat change, because if you're always tapping into what you like and what you're interested in, odds are so are other people. So don't worry about what everyone else is doing, what the trends are doing. Oh, I'm really interested in this, but there might not be a market. It's like, if you're interested, so is someone else. roll with that and be open to change in your own life. Like, you may love soccer right now, but maybe in 5 years you've lost the love of the game and suddenly you're interested in pillow design. It's like, pursue a career in that. So don't worry about the change of other people. Only concern yourself with the change of yourself and your own interests, and always kind of keep checking back to figure out, yeah, what you're interested in and how you can mold your career to be more in line with that. This is my final sign off. Thanks so much for your time. If you have any questions about publishing, feel free to ask me. You can always check me out on Twitter. I use that one mostly for professional stuff, and then Instagram is more about travel, and then LinkedIn is always a good one. But yeah, send me an email if you have a question about getting into publishing. And if you're considering moving post-graduation and the idea scares you, know that there are tons of people who have done it before you. You can do it 100%. It is scary. Go with like a little bit of a safety net, and don't look back. Shit will get hard, but it is completely worth it. And it is the experience that truly will like define who you are and help you get clear going forward. So yeah, thanks for your time, guys. See you from London.